welcome back to yet another episode of On the Grid Podcast. In this episode, we'll be looking back at a very quite eventful Austrian Grand Prix, which saw obviously George Russell gain a victory out of the blue because two drivers out in front decided to just collide with each other and just have a bit of fun. We'll also be looking over the F2 and the F3 and previewing this weekend's British Grand Prix. I'm your host, Adrian, and joining me, as usual, is Ethan Evans. Ethan, how are you today?
All good here. Yeah, very nice weekend in Austria. Very eventful. Looking forward to it.
It wasn't eventful. Let's be realistic. It was only the last 5 laps that was eventful. Apart from that, it wasn't eventful. Anyway, joining us, we've decided to bring on another guest. Naomi Newman. How are you, Naomi?
I'm good, thank you very much. Yeah, good weekend of racing, kind of just overall, obviously from F2 and F3 as well. And a good result in F1. Always nice to have someone different and just a bit of action, even if it's just towards the end.
Yeah, just towards the end. Naomi, introduce yourself. What do you do? Who do you support? All that sort of stuff.
So I'm in university. I'm a sports journalism student. I got into motorsport in 2020, so quite late. But I completely became obsessed. A couple of years later, I created Parc Femme with three of my friends. We went to a lot of racing events together. We've been to London EP together. We've been to Le Mans and various other events. And we decided to create something. Kind of the slogan is made by women for everyone, just helping people get into the sport. I also do some reporting for GB3 and GB4. So not this weekend, but the weekend after, I'll be off to Snetterton just to kind of cover that. And yeah, that's kind of just the way I am. I cover basically any motorsport that you can think of. I love bikes. I love everything in America. Yeah, literally everything.
Motorsport driven, which we like to see on this podcast. We like to see motorsport driven people on this podcast. Okay, Ethan, let's begin. We are going to jump it straight into our average driver ratings. But let's begin with a good old debate regarding Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Bit of argy-bargy, which happened. I think it was on lap 64, if I'm not mistaken, or around that sort of time. Who do you think was at fault? I want to cause a bit of controversy here. Come on.
Well, I mean, there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer, isn't there? It's quite clear Verstappen's at fault. But what I will say is Norris should have been already in the distance at that point in the race. The last 5 races, Lando Norris has had by far the quickest car. And if the roles were reversed, Verstappen would have won every single one of these last 5 races, bar Monaco. So Norris should have never been in that situation to begin with. Of course, it's Verstappen's fault. He's not left the car's width. But also, I think Karun Chandok said quite well, is that, Norris could have gone slightly onto the curb, could have given himself that bit of room, because at the end of the day, it's Norris who's lost out the most. Verstappen's actually extended his championship lead. So it's about being a little bit smarter from Lando Norris, who, by the way, seems to have the best PR in the world. The fact he's won Driver of the Day in the last 5 races. But there we go.
By no means will probably win it at Silverstone anyway, being a crowd favourite. But that's how the cookie crumbles. Naomi, your opinions on the Max Verstappen Lando Norris debacle?
Yeah.
Both of them clearly went on to speak in their respective presses, just going that they need to review the footage XYZ. Yeah, it was at fault.
Again, I do think Max. I think, I love to watch hard racing, but there's definitely a line that you need to stay behind. And I think, yes, as Ethan mentioned, Lando definitely could have approached it differently as well, and he needs to have that wheel-to-wheel experience. But looking back on kind of the racing Max Verstappen has done wheel-to-wheel over the last couple of years, I don't know whether improvement needs to be done there or just something, but as a lot of people said, we kind of saw Max 1.0 of the early years Max during that race and during that fight, and it'll be a lot better to have some cleaner racing. But I also kind of feel like, as much as the 10-second penalty, of course, that's what you should be given, but in that situation, it doesn't do justice for Lando DNFing.
Yeah, of course, Lando was the only retirement in that race. Max Verstappen, talking about dive bombing with Lando Norris. If any of the listeners looked at our kind of meme review for Austria, they did see that meme, and a few examples of Max Verstappen dive bombing. Um, Ethan, do you think it was of a similar scale to Max Verstappen, or are we talking a bit of a smaller scale, and Max is just ever slightly exaggerating all of those comments?
I mean, he's a racer at the end of the day. That's what he's going to do. But it was a dive bomb, but it was a controlled dive bomb. I think if he locked up, he messed it up, and he gave the position back. But it was controlled. It wasn't sending it Abu Dhabi 2021 on the first lap, sort of crazy. Or Brazil 2021, or any example from 2021 for that matter. But I don't know how much of a leg Verstappen's got to stand on when he's moving under braking. So, it kind of goes both ways, doesn't it? Maybe he won't dive bomb if he doesn't move under braking. So, yeah, let's put it like that.
Okay, I think Lando and Max have had enough of their airtime for this episode now, so let's jump into the average driver ratings. Obviously up first, George Russell. P4 in the sprint shootout, P4 in the sprint, P3 in qualifying, and inherited the race lead from the leading pair, and obviously gained the race victory. It's a tough one for me, because obviously it's not the perfect weekend that Max was having up until that point. So I don't think I can give George Russell a 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, it goes without saying. I've settled with a 9.5. Yeah, it's minuscule because I think if he steps on the podium in the sprint, then I reckon it's a 10 out of 10 because obviously Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari are arguably quicker than the Red Bull. And he was on course to get a podium anyway. So it would have likely been a 9 out of 10 if it wasn't for the two colliding. But I've gone half a point extra, given that he obviously got a free race victory from the two colliding. So yeah, I've gone with a 9.5 out of 10. The two of you might disagree with me, but yeah, I just don't think it was perfect. So I've gone with 9.5 out of 10. Ethan?
I do disagree. I want to give him a 9, but I've got to give him a 10 because he got the race win, and at the end of the day, he was on the limit every single session. I disagree with a bit about the sprint race because the only people that's finished above him are the McLarens, who were, again, as I said, the best car, and Verstappen, who is the best driver. So, and then in the race, he's put it into third. Piastri shouldn't have got that penalty, but he's inherited third. And then he's been in the right position at the right time. He was clear of Sainz, who was fourth at that time. And then he's had a big enough gap to hold off Piastri. So he's in the right place at the right time. It's pretty much a flawless weekend from Russell. So it's got to be a 10 out of 10.
I must be a harsh George Russell fan. Because I was thinking maybe even like a 9, maybe just because I think a lot of it, not because it's just luck, because absolutely that's not the case. But as you say, right place, right time, and you can expect high things from Russell. I think my expectations are just quite high especially if you're towards the grid, towards the top of the grid. So I think a 9's good. He was there when he needed to be. He did exactly what he needed to do. But I would have liked to see him move. As you said, it's hard to say when you've got such good drivers ahead of him. But I think I'll go 9.
To Oscar Piastri, sprint shootout P3, sprint P2, qualified P7, and obviously game P2. I've gone with similar rating to George Russell. I've gone with the 9.5 out of 10 as well. It's a double Pookie podium, as McLaren like to call it. But I mean, it's a similar case to George Russell. He's there. Unfortunately, he obviously didn't have that lap time validated in Q3, which saw him start in P7. But he's there. He overtook Sainz, which he needed to do. He overtook Hamilton. He overtook a couple of drivers, and he got himself two P2 finishes in a race weekend. It's near enough perfect. But if obviously he started in P3, he would have won that race, and it would have been a 10 out of 10. Because McLaren are arguably the best team on the grid at the moment and have the quickest car. So I've also settled with a 9.5. It's another good weekend for Oscar Piastri, and he's the only driver to complete every lap this season. Fun fact. Hopefully, I don't jinx him for Silverstone. But at the moment, all looks good for Oscar Piastri. So it's another 9.5 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I've gone slightly low. I've gone for a 9 out of 10. Like you said, he's very unlucky with that lap time. I do have to have a little bit of a rant here. What is the point in bringing in gravel traps to prevent track limits if you're still going to enforce track limits by the white line? He's dipped a wheel into the gravel. He's obviously lost a lot of time doing that, and he's still put in a faster lap. So, who knows where his lap would have been without that? He could have even been on pole if he hadn't dipped the wheel in the gravel. But it's gained no advantage. It's lost him time. So why are we penalising this? You need to either bring the gravel traps in like they done this weekend, and I thought it was a very good idea until they decided to keep enforcing track limits. So I think Piastri is very unlucky with that. So it's a 9 out of 10. As he said, if he starts third, he wins that race, possibly even without the crash. But there we are, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think 9 as well, just because Oscar Piastri he's impressed me since coming up to F1. He's been so strong, and even watching him from F2 and F3 as well, you can see how strong of a driver he is, especially when he's towards the top of the grid. He's able to push, he's able to fight fairly. And I think that's quite an important part, which again we saw this weekend. As you said, shame about that qualifying just like incident. It's frustrating. We get a lot of track limits around Austria anyway, but then for that to happen, he loses time, but then still it's just frustrating as a whole. But I think other than that, he had a really impressive weekend.
On to the final podium sitter in Carlos Sainz. Sprint shootout in P5, sprint P5, qualified fourth and finished third. I've dropped down one overall rating from Piastri and Russell, so I've given Sainz an 8.5. It might be a little bit harsh because the next driver has a similar rating as him. But I think Sainz overall, I don't think he'll be disappointed. But from obviously the start of qualifying and the sprint shootout and whatnot, Sainz was right up there. And I think he was expecting maybe a little bit higher, maybe to challenge George Russell or whatnot for that P3 in qualifying. Maybe he could have finished first or even second for that matter. But I still think he had a good weekend. Ferrari are obviously on a little bit of a back burner compared to McLaren, obviously Verstappen, and I'd probably say Mercedes. But it's still a good job. It's another podium, and maybe consistent Carlos is back. I'm hoping he's back. But yeah, I've gone with an 8.5 out of 10.
I've gone for a 9 out of 10. Again, he's in the right place at the right time, but very, very consistent from Carlos Sainz. He qualified fifth and finished fifth in the sprint race, and then fourth and third in the actual race. So, he's been thereabouts, and he was constantly quicker than Leclerc all weekend, even without what happened with Leclerc in the race on lap one. But very, very good weekend from Carlos Sainz. So it's got to be a 9.
Yeah, I went 8.5. I think I literally already had written on my page was consistent, and that's what you need from a driver. And I think, as we mentioned, he was P5 throughout the weekend. And if Lando and Max hadn't gone out, he probably would have been P5 again. So I think it's what Ferrari need at the moment when they're lacking a bit of consistency. I think it's good for them to be able not to rely on Carlos Sainz, because Charles Leclerc is reliable, but they're not having the greatest time at the moment. But Carlos Sainz is still providing for them, which is good.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Charles Leclerc a little bit later, but let's not go into a depression episode from me right now. Let's continue and talk about Lewis Hamilton. Sprint shootout P6, sprint P6, qualified P5. And finish the race in P4. I've also gone with an 8.5 out of 10. Again, I think it's consistent. He's obviously not been able to do what George Russell did and obviously gain the race victory, but I think that he's done enough to kind of warrant an 8.5 out of 10. I mean, it's similar to Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz finished on the podium. He finished just outside the podium. I think it's still a good weekend regardless for Lewis Hamilton, even though he's been out qualified and beaten in a race again by his teammate, which he's not going to be happy about. But it's something to bear in mind ahead of your home race and maybe getting a podium at your home race. But for this weekend, I think it's all that Lewis Hamilton could have really gotten from Austria. So yeah, I've settled with an 8.5 out of 10.
I've gone slightly lower. I've gone for an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a good performance. He was just it wasn't quite there. He had that good start of the race. Got ahead of Sainz, which he then ended up having to give back. But he looked like challenging Russell as well. But then Russell got back through as well. So he was up to third at one point. And you're looking like he could get a podium. He was looking very good. And then it looked like he had a bit of damage. He had a big hole in his side pod, which was revealed after the race. Which, I'm guessing it probably didn't help him. So to finish fourth is a good result, but slightly disappointing, I'd say.
I think it is disappointing for him. It'll always be disappointing for him if he's not winning. He's Lewis Hamilton. It's always going to be the case. I did an 8.5 as well. I think it's good seeing him back up there, after the last couple of years Mercedes have, which have been really soul destroying. So it's been good to see him up there. As we said, I would say that he's done the best the car could do, but obviously we see George Russell winning, so that's where I see that bit of disappointment where he definitely could have done more. Obviously the issues with the car as well. And as you mentioned, ahead of Silverstone, it's probably just trying to get back into that momentum, try and get up there, because he can do magical things at Silverstone.
Yeah, Ethan is hoping so. Definitely hoping so, aren't you?
Absolutely. I mean, he's got a brilliant record at Silverstone as well. So I'm hoping that a little bit of magic can help him through.
Well, that won't happen because Charles Leclerc is going to absolutely power drive into him, so it's okay. Anyway, moving on to Max Verstappen, who pretty much had a flawless weekend up until that chaos with Lando Norris. P1 in the sprint shootout, P1 in the sprint, P1 in qualifying, and then P5 in the race, obviously after that penalty, pitting in to take the soft tyre, and he was able to finish in fifth. I've still gone with an 8. Call me controversial, but I've still gone with an 8. Purely on the basis, Max Verstappen pretty much had a flawless weekend. Ethan, you're looking at me like you're bamboozled. Right, look, hear me out. He's had a flawless weekend up until that collision, which did cost his race ultimately, but he's gained points from it. If he finishes down the order in like 11th or 12th or even down the lower ends of the reaches, then yeah, okay. The man's had a flawless weekend. One moment of madness can't reflect your whole weekend. He's had it perfectly up until that point. Call me controversial, but I am the host of this podcast, so I do what I want and I will stand by it. So yeah, I've gone with an 8. Call me controversial. You've probably gone with like a 4 or a 2 or a 1 because of that one moment of madness. But I don't think you can label Verstappen just on that one moment of madness to drop him down all the way. He's had P1, 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 and P5. So I don't think you can give him less than a 6 out of 10 because the man's pretty much had a near enough perfect weekend until what happened with Lando Norris when they decided to get a little bit racy, should I say.
Well, first of all, this is going to make a good TikTok clip. I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Max Verstappen, and I stand by that 100%. He has cost himself a chance at victory or at worst P2. I know he's only finished P5, but I think that's because the stewards have bottled it. Because they say they don't take the effect of the incident into account, but they should. They definitely should take the effect of what's actually happened into account in terms of the penalty. Lando Norris is out of the Grand Prix because of something Max Verstappen has done. He was very, very lucky not to get other penalties for dangerous driving, and it goes back to 2021 when these incidents were not actually dealt with at the time. How many times the chuck it up the inside or move on the braking or whatever, they weren't dealt with at the time. And as Andrea Stella said, you're now seeing the effect of these. That drivers think they can do that. Look at Kevin Magnussen in the early race of the season. This is what happens when you don't punish drivers accordingly for the punishment. So it's a 5 out of 10. He's cost himself a podium, and he has wrongfully extended his lead in the championship.
I do completely agree. I did put a 7 purely on the rest of the weekend, but he should get, like, in my opinion, at least a 6 race because he did well through the whole time. But I completely agree with the racing. He needs to sort it out because while I was watching that race, I was watching it with my parents, and I literally said, I was like, this is why, this is what 21 did. This is why he still thinks he is allowed to race like that. I said to my dad, I was like, this makes me think of Sao Paulo because the minute, like, that's the clear one in my brain where Max went off, pushed Lewis off himself, but they both ended up going off, and no one gains from that. And it's just sometimes people need to learn how to lose, and it's not even just losing, it's P2. That's as he said, the worst you're going to get. But racing like that is not acceptable, and I know he hasn't spent really that much time lower down the grid experiencing that consistent wheel-to-wheel racing. And in my opinion, I don't think every driver should have to change the way they race specifically because it's Max Verstappen they're racing. I agree, different people have different specialities and kind of ways that you can work around them. But I think being so aggressive like that and just kind of saying either I win or we're both out is not a good way to do it.
You know what? I love both tangents. We love a good tangent and we love a good debate. I'm standing by my out of 10. It will probably drop his average to about a 6 point something, I think, from the three of us. But anyway, the show goes on. Let's talk about Nico Hulkenberg because from one end of the scale to a complete other, Nico Hulkenberg. I mean, wow, completely awful Friday and Saturday morning. P17 in the sprint shootout and P14 in the sprint. And then he goes on to qualify P9. Okay, he's in the top 10 shootout as per usual, Mr. Saturday, as we like to know him now. And then goes to deliver a P6. Yeah. Beats Perez in the process, who's absolutely washed now after about 2-year contracts that he should not have signed. He's obviously took advantage of Lando Norris. He's taken advantage of Charles Leclerc. Those are the 3 positions that he gained. Let's not talk about Charles Leclerc just yet. Let's continue talking about Nico Hulkenberg because I'm torn whether to give him a 10 or a 9. I'm completely torn because of the Friday and Saturday morning performance. Let's put it into perspective. We're talking about the full weekend here. We're not talking about just a quali and a race. We're talking about a Friday as well. Yeah, you know what, Bonnet, let's give him a 10. Yeah, let's stick with him. Yeah, I've given him a 10.
This is the easiest 10 out of 10, that we've been doing these driver ratings. He's finished 6th and a half. I know he's inherited 2 positions, but regardless, it was absolutely flawless in that race from Nico Hulkenberg. Didn't have the sprint race that he wanted to, but qualified up in 9th, I think it was, and then put in a great shift and overtook a Red Bull on track. It was Sergio Perez's Red Bull, but it was a Red Bull nonetheless, so it's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think P6, other than obviously the top teams, that's the place you're after. That's what you need to get, and doing that in a Haas, which we've seen all season, it's not great. Other than maybe the first few laps of the Canadian Grand Prix, it's not the car you want to be in. So yeah, 10 out of 10, really good. I mean, overtaking Red Bull, yeah, but I think it's good from him.
I think that people really need to revise and have a look at themselves, thinking that Haas is awful. Haas are on a charge, like Alpine. Haas are mighty. And bear in mind,
like Alpine.
Yeah, think about it. Alpine are on an upwards trajectory. We're going to talk about the Gazman a little bit later on, or the Gazman. But yeah, upwards trajectory. I think it's sad to say, but ever since Gunther Steiner's left, everything's going right at Haas, it seems. Was he the problem? Okay, let's that's a debate for a different day. Let's move on to Sergio Perez. P7 in the sprint shootout, P8 in the sprint, qualified in P8 and finished in P7. Right, okay. Here he gets overtaken in the sprint by Charles Leclerc, who's down in 10th. And usually when you're looking at a sprint, you're thinking not many overtakes. You're thinking, right, it's just going to be a nice little smooth sailing. Perez loses a position, of course. He gains a position back in the race, but to Lando Norris, yeah, I'm sticking with a 4 out of 10. I think it's to be in this position, still talking about Sergio Perez and him not being well inside the top five in a Red Bull. Yeah, it is just a joke. I don't know why Red Bull have extended his contract, but you do you. You do you, and they can continue doing what they want. But yeah, it's a 4 out of 10 from me.
4 out of 10 as well. He has finished seventh somehow, but it's nowhere near good enough. He was a minute behind Verstappen when that crash happened. And so he was almost lapped. So he's losing about a second a lap to Verstappen, which is just unacceptable. And I would not be surprised to see Red Bull lose this Constructors' Championship, and that will be solely down to Sergio Perez, because Max Verstappen probably will still win the Drivers' Championship, but Sergio Perez is only 7 points ahead of George Russell in the Drivers' Championship. You think about how bad that Mercedes was at the start of the season; it couldn't finish above seventh, and he's only 7 points ahead. So it is not good enough. And for Red Bull's sake, if Red Bull want to be a serious contender for constructors, they need to make a change.
Yeah, I'm with you both. 4 out of 10. It's just not good enough. From a Red Bull driver who is meant to be really up there. I cannot wrap my head around why they signed another 2 years with them. The only reason I think is just security from silly season as a whole. It's just that, and obviously they're creating their own engine, but I don't understand it. If you want to go anywhere with another driver rather than just Max Verstappen, then they've shown they're not serious with that, because quite frankly, he's not. Sergio Perez is not going to be the driver to do it. I haven't been impressed with him once this season, and I don't think I will be. Really poor from him all around.
Let's move on to the next Haas driver of Kevin Magnussen. P11 in the sprint shootout, P9 in the sprint, P12 in qualifying, and then P8 in the race. Purely on the basis that I've given Nico Hulkenberg a 10 out of 10. I think I'm going to drop it half a rating. I'm going to give Magnussen a 9.5 out of 10. Looking obviously of a Friday and then the Saturday morning, it was better than Nico Hulkenberg. And he wasn't far away from his teammate looking at it realistically. So I don't think he deserves a massive drop in rating because both of them had a really, really good weekend. So I've dropped the half a rating. I've got 9.5 out of 10, but obviously Nico Hulkenberg pips it because of that P6 finish in the race.
Yeah, I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Kevin Magnussen. He's not far off of it in the race, finished P8, and he was also very, very impressive in the sprint as well. He finished P9. When you look at the teams that got the points, it was the top 4 teams that got points in the sprint, and he was best of the rest. So very good effort from him, and 9 out of 10. It's an upturn in fortune, which is what he needed.
Yeah, I went 9 out of 10. I think those two Haas teammates, Magnussen and Hulkenberg, they're quite equal on their level, I think, But, Hulk just pipped it in this race, and I think it's good to have that kind of consistency in Haas at the moment, because when they're trying to be on the up, they kind of need that, and they haven't had that for the last couple of years. So, 9 out of 10.
On to our penultimate points finisher in Daniel Ricciardo. Sprint shootout in P16, sprint P15, qualified in P11, and obviously finished the race in P9. It's a much needed upward in form for Daniel Ricciardo, because obviously a lot of pressure is on his shoulders, but he's not been delivering it as of late. But these 2 points won't go amiss. I've gone with an 8. I've settled with an 8 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo. I think VCARB or RB, whatever you want to call them, I don't think they've had the best of situations after their upgrades. I still think they are very much getting used to their upgrades, but it's a good points finish. He's finished ahead of his teammate. And he's in the points once again. So I've gone with an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, for Daniel Ricciardo, I've gone for an 8 out of 10 as well. It's 2 good points, and it was deserved, but it's a very impressive race performance as well. He started from 14th. He's made up 5 places. He's started 3 places lower than his teammate who hasn't scored points. So it's a brilliant performance from him. And it's what he needed. I know he's had his performances have slowly got better throughout the season. But this is what he needs to be doing, really. This is what we expect from Daniel Ricciardo. So it's good to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wouldn't 8 out of 10 as well. Daniel Ricciardo knows how to race, and he's proved it in this race, and he knows what he's doing. And it's just a shame that he's not been impressive this season. And with Helmut Marko saying, he's not sure where Daniel Ricciardo's future lies, I've got to agree with him. He's not been impressive at all. So I think he needs to use the second half of the season to really show what he's made of and show if he deserves to be in Formula One still. Don't get me wrong, I love Daniel Ricciardo a lot, but he's not been performing the way he needs to this season.
Final points finisher, the Gazman, Pierre Gasly, sprint shootout P9, sprint P12, qualified up in P13, and then finished the race in P10. Also gone with an 8 out of 10. We're obviously going to talk about predictions a little bit later on, but I just had an initial instinct that Gasly is going to get points, and he delivered. Albeit lucky because of Lando Norris retiring from the race. But hey, he's there to make it count. Got the point. Had a fantastic on-track battle with Esteban Ocon. Complete Senna Prost-esque between the two of them. With Gasly obviously coming out on top, which I was happy about. But yeah, I've gone with an 8 out of 10. It's another important point for Alpine and another step in the right direction for them.
I went for a 7 out of 10, so only slightly lower for Pierre Gasly. Again, yeah, it's a good performance, another point, and it does show that they've significantly improved that car this season. But yeah, I can't give him too much higher because there have been better performances than him this season or in this race. Sorry, and I think Daniel Ricciardo is one of them. You can't give Daniel Ricciardo an 8 and then. So I think Pierre Gasly deserves a 7 based on that because I thought Ricciardo's performance was better.
Yeah, I think I gave him an 8 just purely on points, which have been really needed for Alpine this season. Not the best weekend, but I think for what that Alpine can do, I think he did not the best because we all know Pierre Gasly, he can definitely do better. But yeah, I think an 8 out of 10, getting the last points paying position, it's okay.
On to outside the points. Ethan, can you take this one away? I just can't. I can't talk about it.
And next up is Charles Leclerc, Monaco GP race winner. Sprint qualified in 10th and finished 8th. Qualified for the race in 6th and finished a measly 11th place. For this one, I've gone for a 5 out of 10. Very disappointing not to get a points finish for the guy in the Ferrari, the team that's second in the Constructors' Championship. Charles Leclerc third in the Drivers' Championship. Not to get a point, it'll be bitterly disappointed about that. But in all seriousness, he's recovered well from getting that damage on lap 1 to finish on the edge of the points. But I think that's now 3 of the last 5 races that. Two of the last 3 races, Charles Leclerc has been lapped on.
Thank you, Ethan, for that analogy and analysis of Charles Leclerc's race weekend. Short and sweet from me, 5 out of 10 as well. It was just a complete weekend killer for me. Obviously, sprint shootout, he makes a mistake. Qualifying, he makes a mistake. Race, he makes a mistake. And you're just thinking, how many mistakes are you going to make in one race weekend? Why are you bothering trying to send it on lap 1? Why? What is the sole purpose? Like you've obviously got Oscar Piastri involved. He's carried on fine. He's okay. His McLaren's absolutely indestructible. You've got Fernando Alonso involved as well in there somewhere, and yeah, calamitous. Yeah, 5 out of 10. Naomi, take it away because I'll just get depressed here.
Yeah, I went with 5 out of 10 as well. Just a bit of a shame. Charles Leclerc, we all know he can do better, and he just did not prove that this weekend. I think I don't know whether Austria just doesn't like him or whether this has been a running thing, but yeah, just kind of just going, Charles Leclerc, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for that. Makes me feel even better, I'm hoping he has an absolute barnstormer at Silverstone. It'll put a smile back on my face, but guaranteeing he'll probably power drive into Lewis Hamilton, and then me and Ethan will end up having a poor weekend overall. So potato. I'll take it. On to Esteban Ocon, sprint shootout P8, sprint P11, qualified in P10 and finished in P12. Rightio. I've got a bit of a no. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go bold. I'm gonna give him a six. I gave Pierre Gasly an eight, and I'm giving him a six. So if you actually break it down, he started ahead of Gasly, and finished behind him in the race. Obviously, they had a fantastic battle. Don't get me wrong, fantastic battle. But whoever comes out on bottom in that sense, then you're obviously going to get the lower rating. And by all means, it's not the performance Esteban Ocon would have wanted in a race. But it's okay, I suppose. It's just yeah, it's good. It's all right. It's getting there. It's improving. So yeah, 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I've gone for a 6 out of 10 based on the fact that I gave Pierre Gasly a 7. I didn't think there was a lot between them, as there usually isn't a lot in terms of performance between the two drivers. I think they're very closely matched. But Pierre Gasly had the edge on him this weekend, so that's why he's got the edge in the driver rating. So yes, 6 out of 10, decent performance. It'll be disappointing they didn't get any points though.
Completely. I went 6 out of 10 as well. It's just I think the Ocon Alpine is just it's not working. And we saw that very early on in the season that the team and himself just completely parted their ways. I think just mentally even not working out together. And the battle with Gasly, as you mentioned, but yeah, I think not great. I would like to expect points from Ocon, whether it's just lower points. That may be very optimistic from me, but yeah, I think 6 out of 10.
On to our favourite driver on the field, isn't it, Ethan? Lance Stroll. You know what time it is. I don't think it's time for a Lance Stroll rant because he's finished ahead of his teammate. Unless you want to take it away and give me a rant, because I don't have one this weekend.
I don't actually have one this weekend. I mean, I always will rant about Lance Stroll. But on this occasion, I just think the car is rubbish. So to finish 13th, we did nickname 10th place the Lance Stroll giveaway place earlier in the season, but I think that might have been changed now because now the Aston Martin has fallen backwards from what probably the third or fourth quickest car in the first couple of races to now maybe the 7th or 8th quickest car. So yeah, I think that title has to change. But I've gone for a 5 out of 10 because I didn't really pay much attention to him, so I've gone straight down the middle.
Yeah, I've also gone straight down the middle. I've also gone 5 out of 10. It's unlike you not to have a Lance Stroll rant this week. Are you sure? Have you had your Weetabix today?
I'm feeling nice today. I'm feeling nice. So I'm looking forward to Silverstone at the weekend. So maybe I'm in a good spirit. So that's why.
Are you going to have a run after Silverstone? That is the question, though.
Absolutely.
Yes. That's all I wanted. Okay. A 5 out of 10 from Ethan, and a 5 out of 10 from me.
And a 5 out of 10 from me as well. Just kind of you're not noticing him as much in this race, just a bit mid. It's not there, below average, and nothing more, nothing less.
On to P14 man Yuki Tsunoda. This man was consistent with 14s pretty much, apart from his sprint finishing position. 14th from the shootout, 13th in the sprint, 14th in qualifying, 14th for the race. Yeah, I've gone slap bang middle down, 5 out of 10. It's not what Yuki would have expected and not what Yuki would have wanted. Purely on the basis that Daniel Ricciardo has finished on the points and he's kind of finished nowhere near. But yeah, maybe the realization is slowly starting to kick in for Yuki that Daniel Ricciardo is kind of turning up the heat a little bit and giving it his all to kind of rescue his seat. Even though Liam Lawson kind of looks destined for that seat next season, but maybe Ricciardo can steal it and take it away from Liam Lawson. But for Yuki Tsunoda, it's been a bang average weekend. 5 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I've gone 5 out of 10 as well. When you started in, I think it was 11th he started in, and 3 places ahead of your teammate, and you're finishing 5 places below your teammate. it's not a very good weekend for you, is it? So there's an 8 place swing between the two teammates there. So I think maybe even 5 might be being a little bit generous there, but I have gone for 5 out of 10. Not the best weekend for him.
No, I completely agree. I went 5, and yeah, I agree. I thought I was being nice with that. Just a bit of a terrible weekend for him on track. Maybe what's happened not off track, but not racing wise as well. And yeah, just not great for him at all, really.
On to P15 man, Alex Albon. The sprint was a complete disaster for him. 19th in the shootout, 18th in the sprint, and then qualified 16th and finished the race in 15th. Another slap bang middle, 5 out of 10. I think a lot of these drivers are just getting average ratings. They're just having average weekends, especially when you're outside the points and in the lower reaches of the grid. But Alex, I think he'll be very disappointed to see where the Williams has gone. I think it's taken a massive backward step from where it was last season. Obviously, Logan Sargent will drop a P19 every now and again to make it a little bit better for the team. But Alex is expected to be kind of the leading light in that team, and he's just not been able to deliver at all. So yeah, I've gone with another 5 out of 10, slap bang in the middle.
Yeah, I've also gone for a 5 out of 10 for Alex Albon. It's been a really disappointing season for Albon. He had such a good year last year, but that Williams just seems to have regressed. So it's difficult for him. But he's got out qualified for the first time against Logan Sargent. I know it was in sprint qualifying, but qualifying nonetheless. He's finished 15th, and you consider Lando Norris is also retired from the race. The only drivers he's finished above were the Saubers, his teammate, and Fernando Alonso, who got a penalty and who crashed. So a very disappointing weekend for Alex Albon.
Yep, 5 out of 10 as well. I think, as you mentioned, the regression of the Williams has been quite sad, actually, because we saw them starting to have their rise again, obviously, when George Russell was in the car. We were seeing that, and it's quite sad to see that go backwards again, and kind of all that work not paying off. So yeah, a bit of a shame, and I do expect highly of Alex Albon because we all know what he can do. He has potential, and I know he's in a Williams. But yeah, just not a good weekend for him.
Moving on to, I'm joining these two together because the two teammates were placed 16th and 17th. It's Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu in 16th and 17th respectively. I've gone with 4 out of 10s for the two of them. It's just, I think in Spain they did relatively well. To obviously talk about a Sauber team that are yet to score a point this season, and to see him kind of up above a little bit, where they're not likely to be at all. And then for them to just kind of drop back and just kind of go back into their shell and just bring back the Alfa Romeo team, man. The Sauber, the kick, Sauber steak, whatever you want to call it, it's just weighing them down. I think it's too much of a black and the kind of all of them colours combined. I think it's too much paint. Just get a little bit of a paint off. They might get a couple of attempts in there. But yeah, I've grouped them together. I've given them both 4 out of 10. They obviously finished ahead of Fernando Alonso, who sustained damage, and Logan Sargent, and obviously Lando Norris. But yeah, a very average for me.
Yeah, so for the two Saubers, I went for a 3 out of 10 for Valtteri Bottas and a 2 out of 10 for Zhou Guanyu. Zhou Guanyu in qualifying this season has finished 20th on 5 occasions. He's got out of Q1 once. That is just not good enough. I do think his days in Formula One are numbered. I think this will probably be his last season. Let's talk about him getting a reserve seat with a view for 2026. I don't know if that 2026 seat will come with it, but there's the talk around it. It's just simply not been good enough. That Sauber is an absolute dustbin. And I think they're just waiting for Audi in 2026, really, aren't they? So, what more can you say about the team? They're going absolutely nowhere, are they?
Yeah, I completely agree. I gave them joint 4 just because I kind of feel a bit bad for them in terms of the car. It's just not been what it should be. And from drivers like Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas, I expect more from them, especially Valtteri Bottas. I mean, he made such a huge step back going from the Mercedes to the Sauber anyway, and to then have a season like this is really disappointing from him. And talking about Zhou Guanyu, I agree. He's just not done what he's needed to do so far. And I think step up from F2 was it wasn't risky, but I personally think there were some people that deserved it more, and could have maybe performed more. But with this car, there's no telling. So yeah, a joint 4.
Yeah, Valtteri Bottas is just enjoying his life, isn't he? It's just a hobby. He's like Kimi. He's like his second coming of Kimi Räikkönen. They're both Finnish. They've both kind of gone to Alfa Romeo slash Sauber. They're just enjoying life in the twilight of their career. Moving on to Fernando Alonso, who yet again is showing that I don't know what's happening with him. I really don't. I can't put my finger on it. It's probably the car. B, it's probably damage. And C, it's just probably Fernando Alonso being Fernando Alonso and just wanting to do the best for the team, but he can't do it. Bearing in mind, I've gone fours for the two Sauber guys. I've gone for a 3 for Fernando Alonso. It could be a lot lower. I could be giving him a 2, but I've settled with a 3. Yeah, it's just not what Fernando Alonso wants or needs right now. I think he needs at least to challenge for the points. He's unable to do so, and he's finished as the penultimate runner. So yeah, 3 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I agree. I think Fernando Alonso is another one of those drivers like Lewis Hamilton, who, when the car is on it, you don't want any other driver there. But when the car isn't there, their heads drop a little bit. Maybe they don't put in that same sort of, they don't have that same sort of aggression, that punch when they're attacking the corners. But yeah, it's very difficult at the minute for Aston Martin. And you think about Fernando Alonso making those comments after Japan about the Mercedes links, and he's saying, why would I want to go there? We're ahead of them. Or since then, you compare the points that Aston Martin's got to the points Mercedes have got, and there's a clear winner, really, isn't there?
Yeah, I went for a 3 just because as I said, I expect more from Fernando Alonso. I know he got the fastest lap, but that just does not mean anything. And just to me, the regression we've seen in Aston Martin, they were talking about, podiums over the last couple of seasons, even hoping and fighting for wins, and to now kind of see them not even in the points it's insane to me. So yeah, I think just not a good weekend for Alonso at all.
On to our final race finisher, Logan Sargeant. Let's all be happy about Logan Sargeant because he's finished a race once again, but yeah, he's nowhere to be seen once again. Again, I've gone with a 3 out of 10 for Logan Sargeant. He's beating his teammate in the sprint shootout. Let's not take that away from him, and he's beating him in the sprint as well. So let's not take that away from him. But yeah, qualifying in a race, nowhere to be seen. So yeah, 3 out of 10.
Yeah, completely agree. He's off his teammate. I gave Alex Albon a 5, so I got to take that in consideration, give him a bit lower. So 3.
Yeah, I gave it 3. He finished. That's probably what he's after for the rest of the season, is to finish the races.
Only time will tell whether Kimi Antonelli will make the step to Williams or whether he'll go to Mercedes. That is a question to be answered in the near future, and we'll obviously talk about F2 a little later on. Let's move on to our DNFer, Lando Norris, a sprint shootout P2. Finished in P3, qualified in P2, and finished as a retirement. Call me crazy. I've gone with the same rating as Max Verstappen, and I've given both of them an 8, because both of them had pretty much similar weekends, apart from obviously Max P1ing everything apart from his race. His race was ruined. Yes, it was. But I don't think you can give. Well, you could give Lando a higher rating than Max purely on that fiasco, like what Ethan did. But I'm not going to. I'm gonna play devil's advocate, sit on the fence, and give both of them an 8 out of 10.
Definitely sitting on the fence. Make sure you don't fall. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Lando Norris, because again, as I said earlier on, he should have been ahead of Max Verstappen at that point in the race. And again, so there's been 6 races now since, including Miami. So the last 6 races, the McLaren's not been the quickest car on one occasion, which was Monaco, which was when it was Ferrari. Every other occasion, that McLaren has been the quickest car. Lando Norris has won one of those 5 races. And, I think we need to talk about that, because if he wants to be taken seriously as a championship contender, I know this season was already out of the equation. The gap is 80 points, but we need to actually say, is he that level? Is he that level to challenge someone like Max Verstappen? Who knows? But it's a 7 out of 10.
I gave a 7.5 purely on the fact I think, not like he was unlucky that he got crashed out, because I think, it takes two to tango, but I think he can do better. As we've seen him win this season, we've seen podiums. We know he can do better, and he knows he can probably move past it. He knows that himself. And yeah, not like I expect higher than a DNF, because you always expect higher than a DNF. But yeah, he needs to be able to prove himself consistently to try and fight. Yeah.
On to reviewing Austria GP predictions. Ethan, just so we can quickly run over these, how many did you get out of 20 in the 4 categories? Please say you got a low number.
I got 3.
Yes.
So I got a Max Verstappen sprint pole and win. I had Russell P4 in the sprint race. I am very disappointed with the race prediction, because I had Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Leclerc. So I had Verstappen and Norris correct at that point. I had the wrong Mercedes in 3rd. I had Piastri 4th, which was correct. And then I had the wrong Ferrari in 5th. So I'm very annoyed about that. And then there was a couple of others where I put, the 2 McLarens the wrong way round, Verstappen and Norris the wrong way around in qualifying. But yeah, not good. But I got 2-star predictions correct. I had Hulkenberg in the points, and there was an incident at turn 4 when Leclerc got that damage on lap 1. So 2-star predictions, and I'll take that.
So that's 5 out of 22, correct? Yeah, I'll just say that I got 6 alone out of a 20. So yeah, I'll take this weekend. Is that okay with you? Yeah, it's fine. So I did predict Max Verstappen and Lando Norris correctly for the sprint shootout. I predicted George Russell correctly for the sprint, and then I got 3 out of 5 in qualifying with Verstappen, Lando, and Carlos Sainz, and then my race predictions were in the bin. Obviously, it's annoying because my prediction of 3 constructors on the podium was kind of correct, but I said for every single session, and obviously we saw 2 constructors on the podium for the sprint, which was annoying. But Gasly points, that was another one, so I settled with a 7 out of 22. Let's jump on to our Formula 2 corner and Formula 3 corner. Good old weekend in Formula 2. Dennis Hauger on a pole position in qualifying in Formula 2. Split by only 8 thousandths with Joshua Dirksen in the AIX car in 2nd, with Gabriel Bortoleto in 3rd. Obviously, that saw how kind of reversed into 10th, and Kush Miney, who finished 10th in qualifying, inherited pole position for the sprint race. But it was actually Ollie Behrman that took a race victory. Unlikely of him. He's obviously, I wouldn't say he's necessarily struggled in Formula 2. I think his Saudi kind of voyage in Formula 1 kind of put his headspace in one direction, and I don't think, I wouldn't say he's been awful, but I just think that he's been a little bit unfortunate not to get more points. Jose Maria Marti in 2nd, Paul Aaron consistent once again, the championship leader in 3rd, Gabriel Bortoleto 4th, Dennis Hauger 5th, Jack Crawford 6th, Kush Miney 7th, and Joshua Dirksen in 8th. And then heading into the feature race, Dennis Hauger was obviously on pole position, but he stalled on the grid. So he completely lost his chances of getting a race victory. It was Gabriel Bortoleto that took that race, with Franco Colapinto and Isaac Hadjar completing the podium places. Jose Maria Marti did finish fourth, but obviously got a time penalty, which saw Enzo Fittipaldi from P15 to P4. Tremendous. Paul Aaron, another consistent P5. Joshua Dirks in sixth. Amari Cordeal in seventh. Taylor Barnard in eighth, Zach O'Sullivan in ninth, and Jack Crawford in 10th. Ethan, did you manage to catch any of your Formula 2 action? Who was you impressed by? That sort of stuff. What did you find of the drivers of tomorrow, as the old slogan is?
I didn't get to watch it live, but I did go back and watch it. It's good to see Ollie Behrman getting the sprint race win, kicking off his season. I know he's pretty much confirmed to be at Haas, but he's had a bit of a disappointing campaign so far. So to see him get that win was good to see. Paul Aaron, again, he's been the standout this season so far. I think his biggest asset has been his consistency. We said it in the preview. He's not won a race this season, but again, he finished third and fifth across in the sprint race and feature race. So I think he's actually extended his advantage at the top. So that's the type of consistency you need. So it might actually help that his one lap pace isn't sort of sublime, that he's not one of these like Charles Leclerc types who's always getting on pole, that he's qualifying sort of between that 4th to 7th region. So even for the sprint race, he's in a position where he can challenge those upper places, and in the feature race, he can do the same. So he's starting in a good position for both. So he's got to be the one to watch this season.
Naomi, what did you make of Formula 2? There's obviously me and Ethan spoke very highly about the format with a sprint race and a feature race. A lot of points on offer. We obviously saw Gabriel Bortoleto take the chunk of the points last weekend in Austria. But Ethan's highlighted there, Paul Aaron, very consistent, extended his championship lead, and it looks like it's between him and Isaac Hadjar, maybe even Gabriel Bortoleto pulling himself into the championship questions. But those two seem to be taking it away right now.
Yeah, so I used to work with feeder series, so I've always kept quite a close eye on Formula 2, Formula 3, the regionals, and Paul Aaron has always impressed me. He's always been consistent, which he's now having the chance to show in Formula 2, which I'm really glad about. But I still cannot wrap my head around the fact that Mercedes dropped him. And, I don't get it. I know they are putting kind of all the eggs in one basket for Kimi Antonelli, but if you want to keep your options open, Paul Aaron is there, and he is there to be good and impress. I think one thing that didn't impress me this weekend was the actual championship, the cars, and that really disappointed me, because as we all know, these drivers pay a lot to race in these championships, and for the cars to not work and to let them down. And this is not the first time. We've seen it plenty of times. I think it happened in one of the major moments for me that stands out is Monaco, I think F2 a couple of years ago. I think it was Callum Ilott on pole, and he couldn't even start the race because the car stalled, and then they can't restart it after that by themselves. And that shouldn't be the case when they're paying so much money. So I really hope they can get that sorted for the coming years. But yeah, really impressive from Behrman as well. Not the great start for Prema. Just not really. I don't know what was wrong, whether it was the car, who knows. But yeah, starting to get some action under his belt.
Yeah, we touched upon Kimi Antonelli there a little bit, Ethan. 0 points this weekend. Nil points from Kimi Antonelli. If you're expecting a Formula One seat, surely you're expected to kind of be at least within the top 5 in Formula 2. Like we've seen champions of the past, Callum Ilott, we've seen Felipe Drugovich, we've seen Teo Pourchaire kind of had to take routes elsewhere. They can't get their way into Formula One. What's kind of the plan that Kimi Antonelli has to hit to get himself that drive for Mercedes or Williams, whoever he kind of gets the chance to drive with next season?
He's got to have a bit of consistency, really. That's the last 2 races he hasn't scored any points for that. Yeah, he's a very promising driver, but if he's not doing the business in F2, that's not a good sign of things to come going forward. Realistically, it's too late in the day now to have a think about having a championship charge. But I think that it might not be the worst thing for him and his development that he stays in F2 for another year. I don't think that would be the worst thing. He's only 17 years old, I think it is, or maybe 16. So to stay in the sport another year, get a bit more experience under his.
Let's move on to Formula 3. And in Formula 3, it was Luke Browning that took pole position in qualifying ahead of Arvid Lindblad and Tim Tramnitz. Gabriel Maini and Dino Beganovic rounded off the top five for the two Prema drivers, 2/10 within outside of pole position. Oliver Goethe in sixth, Lawrence Van Hoopen in seventh, Sebastian Montoya, a very good eighth for Campos. Alex Dunn, obviously a McLaren junior driver, in ninth, Nikola Tsolov in 10th, Christian Mantle 11th, and Martinius Stenhorst in 12th. It was obviously Stenhorst on pole position with Mansell and Tsolov in second and third, but it was Nikola Tsolov that took the race victory, his second race victory, and an extra point for the fastest lap, with Martinius Stenhorst and Christian Mansell rounding off the podium. And in the feature race, it was Luke Browning that was obviously on pole position, and he took the race victory, with Gabriel Maini and Dino Beganovic rounding off the top three, with Christian Mantle, Oliver Goethe, Nikola Tsolov, Arvid Lindblad dropping from second to seventh, Lawrence Van Hoopen, Leonardo Fornaroli, and Alex Dunn rounding off the points. Even Formula 3, Luke Browning, I want to say he's started his charge back after a couple of poor rounds. He's been able to get back up to speed, gain the most points out of from any other driver on the Formula 3 grid last weekend, retaking the championship lead. It's what you need if you want to progress into Formula 2. You can need these weekends on a regular basis. Luke Browning kind of had I wouldn't say poor, but he's kind of been in the background the last couple of weekends, but he's finally been able to deliver, and he's back in the championship lead.
Yeah, it's a good performance from him. I think that, he's got the win, of course. I think that's second of the season. And it's like what we said with Paul Aron. It's about consistency. You're going to win you've got a much better chance getting these sorts of third, fourth place finishes on a consistent basis than getting a couple of wins and then finish outside the points. I think Luke Brown has actually scored points in every single feature race this season, and he scored double digits points as well. So that's a good effort all season long, and that's the reason he's winning the championship. I think Mini and Fornaroli are also in contention, but we'll see how it continues. We've got another race this weekend, the third of the triple headers, so it'll be very interesting to see how that goes.
You mentioned there Gabriele Maini and Leonardo Fornaroli. You could even extend it to Dino Beganovic, Christian Mansell, Arvid Lindblad, and Oliver Goethe. Those guys are only. Well, I mean, Oliver Goethe is seventh on 77 alongside Arvid Lindblad, and they're only you're looking at 9 points away from third place, and not so far away from Luke Browning. Anyone below that, you look at Tim Tramnitz in eighth and Lawrence Van Hoopen and Nikola Tsolov, who are not even reached the 50-point mark. I don't know. I wouldn't class them completely out of contention, but I think that top seven is pretty much set. And I think it will be between those seven drivers who will be crowned champion in Formula 3. But Naomi, it's another good weekend for Gabriele Maini for Prema. Dino Beganovic has also had a good weekend. Arvid Lindblad, on the other hand, he's obviously slipped up a little bit in the feature race after getting a front row. But he wasn't able to deliver. You could call it a rookie being in that grid, but I believe he is the top rated rookie currently in the field. Not without a question of being in the championship. But who do you think out of those three Prema drivers has got the best chance? Obviously, Maini's ahead in the championship as it stands, but Dino Beganovic, that experience. Well, the two drivers, Maini and Beganovic, have experience in this championship and probably could go a long way and could potentially win it.
I mean, the reason personally I love Formula 3 is that you never know, you literally never know who's going to win the championship. I think I remember when Oscar Piastri actually won, and it was Fred Vesti and Logan Sargent fighting with him for that, and it literally went down to the last few laps of the last races of the season, and that's what you want from a championship, just that kind of action that you don't know what's going to happen. What I don't like about Formula 3 is waking up early in the morning, but it's worth it when you get something like that. Personally, I think Gabriele Mini is going to be the lead Prema. I mean, Bogdanovic and Lindblad, they're consistent. They are also definitely going to be up there. But if I had to choose one, I think Mini's experience has been amazing. Obviously, he spent a few seasons with ART. He's at Ferrari at the moment. He's with Alpine at the moment. He was with Ferrari for a few seasons. And yeah, so I think he has that really good experience. I think I don't know whether I feel like he's quite a calm-minded driver. I think he just gets his head down and gets on with it. But yeah, you mentioned a few other names. I think Christian Mansell is another person that's kind of in the background. I personally root for him. I think he's a really strong driver, and some really good names in the championship, and it's going to be close, definitely.
That rounds off our kind of Formula 2 and Formula 3 corner. Let's move on to our British Grand Prix predictions, which are very, very muchly awaited. Ethan, take it away. Why don't you take it away with your star predictions?
So I've gone for rain in a Formula One session. The weather is not looking too good. So I'm going to say just in one of the Formula One sessions. I'm not including the entire weekend. I'm not including the support series, saying just the Formula One sessions. And then I've also gone for no Aston Martins in Q3.
Ethan's clearly looked at the weather radar. Have you packed your umbrella, your boots, your wellies?
I've put my pack back in my bag already. Don't you worry.
Oh, okay, all right. I was just worried. We don't want to have what happened last year, and I wouldn't say we came underprepared, but it just started chucking it down, and we know what happened there. Be prepared. Naomi, take it away with your 2-star predictions.
My 2 predictions are that there'll be a long red flag in quali. Not sure for what. Maybe it's for rain. Maybe it's for a barrier repair. Not sure. And I think it'll be a double Williams DNF.
Oh, yeah. I've also gone down the roads of DNF, and I've gone for a safety car. Why not? We love a good safety car. We didn't see one last weekend. I just want to see the bright lights of a safety car in the rain potentially. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Let's move on to qualifying. I'll begin. I don't know what I thought when writing these, but I'm looking back and I'm thinking I'm crazy. Clearly I'm expecting rain and something absolutely horrendous to happen. I've gone Lando Norris for pole position. Probably your best bet if it's not Max Verstappen, but I've not actually put Max Verstappen in second. I've put Carlos Sainz in second. I reckon Carlos will throw a little bit of a curveball. I put Max Verstappen in third. I put Charles Leclerc to turn his form around and qualify in fourth, and I put Oscar Piastri in fifth. But looking back on it, I'm thinking, what were you thinking? Maybe it comes off. Maybe I get a 0 out of 5, but it's some entertainment value, isn't it? Ethan, your quality predictions.
So I've gone for Lando Norris on pole. I've gone for Max Verstappen second, Oscar Piastri third, and then the Mercedes duos of Hamilton fourth, Russell in fifth.
I've gone Max on pole. Sorry, guys, but just you wait until you hear later. I've gone Max on pole. I've gone Lando P2. I've gone Charles P3, and I've then gone Oscar and Sainz rounding up with P4 and P5, which is
yeah. We've gone very, very different. I'm hoping that some of these kind of predictions kind of line together, and we kind of get like one of us get a prediction correct. For the race. Unfortunately, I don't see anybody else winning but Max Verstappen. So I've gone with him in P1. I see Lando Norris dropping to second. I've gone with Charles Leclerc to overtake Carlos Sainz and finish on the podium. I reckon he needs it, and if he doesn't get, I won't have a miserable weekend if he doesn't. I'll have a good weekend if he finishes within the top 6. Please, Charles, do it for me. And I've gone with Carlos Sainz and George Russell to round off the top 5. Ethan, finally, your race predictions.
So I have gone for Norris to win, Verstappen second. I've gone Hamilton third, because he's got an unbelievable track record of podiums at Silverstone. And then Piastri and Russell fourth and fifth.
My top three is actually the same as Ethan. I've gone Lando to win because I think he can do it at Silverstone. The crowd there is just unbelievable on a race day. Max P2, Lewis P3 because Silverstone's his home. I've gone George P4 and I've gone Sainz P5.
So I'm guessing you've probably put Charles Leclerc in sixth, but I'll take it because, yeah, why not?
Sure.
Unless he
He's
crashes
P7
out.
for me. He's P7 for me. I think something's gonna happen. Something's gonna.
Well, Ethan, be wary because Charles Leclerc's pile driving into Lewis Hamilton and Lewis Hamilton's limping home with a puncture.
I mean, if they even get into the same session of qualifying, that is.
Wow, that's below the belt, that. I thought we were supposed to be good friends. That's below the belt. Thanks for that.
So now we'll move on to Silverstone at the weekend, the most recent race. So were lucky enough to get tickets. We were lucky enough to go, which is why over the last sort of week or so, the content's not been as on it as it usually is. So we'll start by looking at practice. And on the Friday, we've got to say that McLaren looked like the team to beat. Lando Norris topped both sessions on the Friday in what was not the best conditions, were they? They weren't the greatest conditions. We did get a little bit soggy.
Yeah, we did get a little bit soggy towards the end of the day. We can admit that one, but during FP1 and sort of FP2, it was in and out of the rain. But yeah, like you said, the content hasn't been there, and as people will know, this will be joined onto our previous review, which was the Austrian Grand Prix. But talking about Silverstone, like you said, McLaren were the team to beat. I believe it was in FP1 when Lando Norris and Isaac Hadjar had a bit of a coming together into I believe it was near the loop where Isaac Hadjar kind of didn't see Lando Norris coming and the team Red Bull got a fine for it. But apart from that, like you say, Lando Norris in first, Oscar Piastri in third in FP1, and in FP2 it was a 1 and 2 to McLaren. So they were looking extremely strong heading into obviously qualifying. What transpired, we'll talk a little bit later on, but they certainly were the team to beat ahead of qualifying.
Yeah, there's quite a few rookies running in FP1. So you had Isaac Hadjar, as you said. Ollie Behrman was in the Haas, Colapinto in the Williams, and then you also had
Jack Doohan.
That's it. I didn't forget his name for a second there. Jack Doohan, yes, he replaced. I think it was Lance Stroll in FP1. But yeah, that near
Stroll, Alpine, Stroll.
Right, we'll cut that bit
Pierre
out.
Gasly.
Cut that bit out.
Pierre Gasly.
Cut. Yeah, Pierre Gasly, that's the one. Djokovic is Aston Martin, isn't he? Right. Yeah, McLaren were definitely the team to beat on the Friday, and we had quite a few rookies running in FP1. So you had Colapinto in the Williams, Isaac Hadjar, as you said, in the Red Bull, Jack Doohan in the Alpine, and Ollie Behrman in the Haas. But then it seemed to all shift on the Saturday. So in FP3, Russell led Hamilton, led Norris, and that might sound familiar because that was actually how it transpired in qualifying. A Mercedes front row lockout, George Russell getting a second pole position of the season, and a first front row start for Lewis Hamilton. It was from a personal point of view, it's a brilliant moment. And then with Lando Norris making it a 1-2-3, it was brilliant seeing that in front of the fans, and the cheers that you'd get whenever somebody would put in a lap, even to the point where Lewis Hamilton was provisionally second, and Russell was first. Hamilton put the lap to take him on to provisional pole. Everyone cheered, so Russell got knocked down second. Then Russell put in a quicker lap to retake pole, and again everyone cheered. It's almost like nobody cared who actually was first. It's just the fact that it was a British driver. So you had the same people cheering for Hamilton as you had cheering for Russell, which was a strange moment. What do you make about the qualifying on the Saturday?
We were freezing. Up in the stand at Beckett's corner. We were right at the top of the stand, and it was absolutely Baltic. I'm not going to disclose any photos of what we got of my brother during the qualifying session. All I'm going to say is he was very cold, and we managed to tie his coat to the railings. You can probably get the picture, get the gist of what happened. But yeah, it was very good to see every single fan kind of get together and kind of cheer on the three British drivers. Albon is a fourth, but technically he's driving under the Thai flag. So the three British drivers, to see him getting 1, 2, and 3 in qualifying was very good. From a personal standpoint, seeing Ferrari doing so badly was kind of a shame. Um, but I was there to kind of also support the three Brits, and no matter what, and it was very nice to see seeing so many people cheer and celebrate when the final qualifying standings came in as Russell first, Hamilton second, and Norris in third.
Yeah, a little bit further back, you had Verstappen only managing to qualify fourth. Obviously, he got that floor damage. I think it was in Q1, in fact. He ran over the gravel, I think, which was at Cops, if I'm not mistaken, in the same corner that his teammate Sergio Perez crashed. He managed to avoid the barrier, went on the little service road um, down the side of it, right next to the barrier. So he cut it very close, but he managed to keep the car running. But the damage was significant, costing him a shot at pole position. Oscar Piastri a little bit further back. There was a little bit of a fuffle at the end of Q3. Quite a few drivers weren't able to actually get their laps in. So Fernando Alonso was one of them. Oscar Piastri had his lap jeopardized as well. He was looking very strong and was in the hunt for pole position. And Carlos Sainz was the other one, qualifying down in seventh behind Nico Hulkenberg. So a disappointing day for Ferrari, with Charles Leclerc missing out on Q3. Now we did share a little look at each other when Leclerc got knocked out, didn't we? Especially with Hamilton and Russell 1 and 2. Yeah, let's talk about that. What went wrong for Charles Leclerc?
From a cheers and a celebration and a jubilance in Q1 when our drivers were 1, 2, 3, and 4 to an absolute mess in Q2. I don't know. I seriously don't know what was wrong with Leclerc. Maybe understeer, maybe just the drying conditions. I don't know. I simply can't put a finger on it. It's been what, three races since Monaco, where Charles Leclerc and Ferrari have just completely been in the bin. Even Fred Vasseur said that these tracks like Silverstone, like Austria, maybe even Hungary, when we go to the Hungaroring next week, they won't be Ferrari suited. So Ferrari are likely to be of a back burner. But I think that's likely to happen when the teams around them are making significant upgrades to their cars, and kind of pulling away from Scuderia. So it was unfortunate to see, but we really can't do anything about it. It sort of happens, especially when you've got drying conditions at Silverstone. From one minute you have rain, another minute you have sunshine. It just happens. It's one of those. You can't get too disappointed about it, but for Charles Leclerc not to get into Q3, it's bitterly disappointing.
Absolutely, yeah. And then a little bit further back, Sargent with his best qualifying of the season, getting into 12th. And then Guan Yu Zhou as well, beating his teammate for the first time in qualifying this season. Only took him half a season. He's finally out qualified Valtteri Bottas. And then the other big talking point, I think, from qualifying is Sergio Perez. Now, it was at the point where the track was drying slightly. A lot of people were putting on the soft tyres. This is something that we didn't clock at the time. Obviously, being in the stands, you don't get all the information. Sergio Perez was on his outlap on the softs when he binned it at Cops. That is absolutely terrible for him. Qualified down in 19th, and the only reason that he didn't qualify 20th was because Pierre Gasly basically put in a lap and then went into the pits, and we didn't see any more of him because obviously he had that massive grid penalty. Talk to me about Sergio Perez. What is he here for?
We talked about us two sharing a moment, but we shared a moment with my cousin who's a Red Bull fan. And we kind of both looked at him and we just felt like Perez has binned it. And he was just felt like, oh well, Christian Horner will end up coming out with a statement and going, "Oh, Perez is going to come through the pack and do this, that, and the other." But to have the experience of Sergio Perez and to bin it on your outlap, knowing that the track is drying, absolutely bamboozles me. I don't know what on earth he's doing. I don't know how on earth he's binned it. But surely, if you know that the track is drying, and surely that you want to gauge the track a little bit, maybe you just tiptoe your way around the track. Clearly, Perez does his own thing because he signed that new 2-year extension on the contract at Red Bull, which basically gives him a safety net. So that guy's his own man. It may as well just be Max Verstappen, Red Bull Racing Team, and Sergio Perez, Paul Racing Team. Because that man just simply has lost his touch, has lost his momentum, has lost his composure. He's lost everything since that contract signing, and how he's managed to escape with a 2-year extension on a contract, nobody knows. Only he will know. But after qualifying and after Silverstone, the time must be numbered, surely, for Sergio Perez.
That's a very interesting point you make, because apparently there are performance clauses in Sergio Perez's contract where the team can basically get rid of him for free if he doesn't perform to a certain level. And you've got to think that is surely in jeopardy. But it looks like Red Bull would promote Daniel Ricciardo if they were to promote anyone, which is very, very harsh on Yuki Tsunoda for the season he's having, doing great things in that RB. So we will move on now to our 1 to 10 driver ratings. And there's no better way to start it off than with the man who got his 104th victory in Formula One. I told you in the predictions, which you'll actually see earlier in this episode, that Lewis Hamilton loves Silverstone. His record at Silverstone is unbelievable. And I can see you rolling your eyes, but I'm going to continue. It is the easiest 10 out of 10 that we've ever done on this podcast, I think. Absolutely flawless from start to finish. Wasn't always the quickest car. At the start, he was running behind Russell. The track got a little bit damp. He overtook him, and the McLarens flew by. But with McLarens making mistakes with both their drivers in the strategy, he was able to capitalise on them, and he managed just about to hold off Max Verstappen. I think given another lap, he probably would have been overtaken, but he wasn't. So we'll take the victory. 2.5 years in the making. 10 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, this is the easiest 1 out of 10 ever. Purely on the basis now, 1 out of 10 times 1 out of 10 times 10. Easiest 10 out of 10. No, you say that I've rolled my eyes. I wasn't rolling my eyes. I was just waiting my turn because you were prolonging it so much and just constantly just chatting rubbish. But Lewis Hamilton, it's just short and sweet. His 9th win at Silverstone, capped off by wonderful sunshine at Silverstone. From P2 to P1. Yeah, 10 out of 10. All you need to know. 9 wins now. And it's a 10 out of 10. Yeah, 10 out of 10. Max was very close, but Lewis held him off. So yeah, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I actually saw a stat with his average lap times on that soft stint, and the consistency is unbelievable on tyres that were clearly degrading very quickly, and when the hard was the quicker tyre, unbelievable. Moving on now to Max Verstappen, he qualified 4th and finished 2nd. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. It is quite close to being a 10 actually, because I don't think he could have done much more. He got that damage in qualifying, and that obviously hampered him a lot. But he still managed to stick it in 4th place, ahead of one of the McLarens. And then he was running quite a quiet race for parts of it. Sainz was caught up to the back of him at one point, and starting from 7th. But it is a 9 out of 10, and I just want to say to the people booing him in the grandstands we were sat in, a big get out of it. I would swear, but I'm not going to on the podcast. So yeah, 9 out of 10, very good performance, and there's a reason he's the top of the championship, because he's always delivering, he's always there.
I've gone with a 9.5 out of 10 for Max Verstappen, purely on the basis that even though he had some tricky conditions to work in, with especially his floor damage, he still managed to get on the podium to get close to Lewis Hamilton in the end. Yeah, to all the people that were booing Max Verstappen in the Stowe grandstands, honestly, like, grow up. The man is the best driver on the grid currently. I mean, he's not the best of all time, but currently he's the best for a reason. He's won 3 championships back to back. People can say 2 championships because Hamilton was robbed, etc. XYZ. That's in the past. He's a 3-time world champion, and he's a 3-time world champion for a reason. So the people at Silverstone that were constantly booing Max Verstappen, seriously, grow up, have a look at yourself. But going back to Max Verstappen's performance, it's a performance that showed determination and a lot of willpower. He made his move past Lando Norris to take second place, and from then on in, he was a man on a mission trying to hunt down Lewis Hamilton, which unfortunately he couldn't. But yeah, it's close to a 10 out of 10 performance, but I've settled with a 9.5 out of 10.
Absolutely. Moving on now to third place man, Lando Norris. Started third, finished third. It's an 8 out of 10 from me. I think there was a lot left on the table for McLaren. There's been, 6 races now. This is a 7th race, including Miami. So for half the season, McLaren have had the quickest car. They've got less wins than both Mercedes and Ferrari, And in that time, in those 7 races, Verstappen's only won 3 of them. And the other 3 of the other wins have gone to Mercedes and Ferrari. So it's not as if you've got to say, oh, it's Max Verstappen doing Max Verstappen things. There has been opportunities. You look at the last 2 races, Russell and Hamilton winning when the McLaren probably should have. I know Monaco is the exception because the Ferrari was the quickest there, but still, how many times the Mercedes won when they weren't the quickest car? So, it swings and roundabouts. I don't know why they pit him for softs. I think they were covering off Hamilton when they should have actually had the know-how on the pit wall to say, no, wait a second, the mediums is the quickest tyre. We've got a new set of mediums as well. Let's do that. But they didn't. They waited a lap too late as well to make it even worse. But yeah, it's a nightmare scenario for McLaren. And unless it's one thing having the quickest car, it's another thing winning races. So an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. For this one, I grouped the 2 McLarens together. I both gave them an 8 out of 10. Purely on the basis of strategy. Their strategy went completely out the window. It was the easiest 1-2 ever if strategy wasn't involved. But unfortunately, one thing that I've kind of learned and took away from Russia all those years ago: don't trust Lando Norris when it comes to strategy. That's one thing you cannot do. And one thing I think McLaren sort of did during this Grand Prix, and it came back to bite them in the backside. Oscar Piastri gained a place, of course, on George Russell after he DNF'd, so he finished P4. But it easily could have been a 1-2 finish for McLaren if it wasn't for their poor strategy choice. They could have easily double stacked. We saw what Mercedes did. I believe they brought both of their drivers in and they double stacked, and it worked to perfection. So if they can do it, why can't you? It's that sort of thing. So I've given both of them an 8 out of 10. The quickest car out there, but certainly they've not delivered it at all in the last couple of races. So 8 out of 10 for both of them.
And speaking about Oscar Piastri, I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for him, actually, because I think he was massively screwed over by his strategy. He lost an entire pit stop by waiting out another lap. And that don't think you can criticize him too much for that. Because we were sat at Stowe and you could see when he went into the pit, Norris passed him seconds later. So he is being completely shafted there by by the strategy at McLaren. They should have double stacked, like you said. They probably would have lost a few seconds. Like Russell lost a few seconds. He came out behind Verstappen. But in the grand scheme of things, he's not lost an entire pit stop. But the reason I'm giving him a 9 out of 10 is because by the end, he finished less than 5 seconds behind his teammate. He went on to the mediums, as Lando should have done, and he was fantastic. He was setting fastest lap after fastest lap. He would have got it if Sainz didn't pit for a new set of softs right at the end, because of the massive gap to 6th place Hulkenberg. But a very, very good performance from Piastri, and I think it's deserving of a 9 out of 10. I don't know what more realistically he could have done. I think it was completely out of his control because right before they went on to Winters, I think he was right behind Norris as well. So he just missed out on that sense. And we'll move on now to Carlos Sainz. So he started down in seventh and finished fifth. Again, I've gone for a 9 out of 10. Ferrari probably had the fourth quickest car this weekend. They weren't anywhere in terms of pace, but he's really pulled it out of the bag. Like as you said, he was right on the back of Verstappen on the Inters when that Red Bull didn't look too comfortable. And I think we've got to be a bit realistic as well, because the McLaren is easily the quickest car. There's an argument to say that at the weekend Mercedes had the second quickest car and Red Bull were third. But Sainz in that fourth quickest Ferrari put in a very, very good performance. I don't think he could have finished any higher realistically. So it's a 9 out of 10 from me.
Well, that's cool as a shot because I've originally put an 8 out of 10 provisionally, but I'm happy to settle with a 9. You've given some good points there because, like you said, Sainz did start behind Hulkenberg and obviously George Russell, who retired in the end, but gained 2 places from those guys and probably was not going anywhere else. So I'm happy to settle with a 9 out of 10. Ferrari, like you said, probably the fourth quickest car out there at the weekend. But yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, I'll settle with a 9 out of 10. I think Carlos has done a very good job to propel that Ferrari into the top 5 and actually finish within the points, because arguably after looking at what Charles Leclerc was doing at the other end of the field, points, if those two drivers were neck and neck, I don't think points were on the cards, but Sainz actually took the torch and led Ferrari into a top 5 finish. So yeah, deserve it of a 9 out of 10.
Moving on to Nico Hulkenberg now. Started sixth and finished sixth, and yet again is a 10 out of 10. Back-to-back sixth place finishes for Nico Hulkenberg. It's incredible. What more do I have to say? Yeah, he's continued to show he's a fantastic driver. It's just a shame he'll be going to a wheelie bin next season.
A wheelie bin. A wheelie bin. Did I hear that correct? A wheelie bin.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you never know. They could bring something out the blue. They are set to be Audi in 2026, so they could bring something out the blue. But yeah, it's a 9 out of 10 from me. Nah. I'm joking. It's a 10 out of 10. Before you start going mad at me, I've got 10 out of 10 written here. I've got 10 out of 10 somewhere here written. But yeah, it's the best points finish for a Haas driver since Kevin Magnussen, and I think it was 2020, I think, or something like that. I saw a stat on F1, because Magnussen finished sixth and fifth, and Hulkenberg's just finished sixth and sixth. So it's the best back-to-back finish for a Haas driver since K-Mag back in the day. But yeah, you can't really say much. Nico Hulkenberg just constantly provides the goods for Haas and has propelled him close to that closing gap on Aston Martin, would you believe it? And it's all down to Mr. Nico Hulkenberg. K-Mag's doing a steady job back there, but everything that Haas has done good this season so far is down to Nico Hulkenberg, and a P6 finish is warranted a 10 out of 10 from me.
Moving on now to Lance Stroll, would you believe it, in seventh place. Qualified eighth and finished seventh. I've actually gone for an 8 out of 10 because he's beat his teammate. Again, I've not watched the race back yet, and of course you miss things being at the track. But he's beat his teammate. He's finished just behind Hulkenberg as well. Seems like a decent performance. But realistically, this should be the level. This should be the standard for Lance Stroll. Because at the end of the day, he's not had a good season at all, and he's been in Formula One for like 8 years now. So this should be the standard that his performances are judged against, but they're not, because everybody knows why. It doesn't need to be said. So yeah, 8 out of 10 though. It was a good performance.
So similarly to the 2 McLaren drivers, I've grouped the 2 Aston Martin drivers. I've gone with 8 out of 10 for Lance Stroll, and I've gone a 7 for Alonso, purely on the basis Alonso, realistically, man, you shouldn't be finishing behind Lance Stroll at all. At any race weekend, you shouldn't be finishing behind Lance Stroll. And Lance Stroll has pulled it back out of his backside for once and has delivered the goods, finishing a place above his teammate. Um, yeah, I think the Astons had a steady and good weekend. I think in free practice, 1, 2, and 3, they were showing that slow signs of improvement from the couple of dismal weekends that they've had. But in Silverstone, at the home race, they kind of delivered the goods and showed that they're not down and out, and they've still got a little bit of fight in them. So yeah, I've gone with an 8 and a 7 for an 8 for Lance Stroll and a 7 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. Because if you start up in front of your teammate, you should be beating them. Sorry, no, he started behind his teammate, didn't he? He started down in 10th, which was due to the poor strategy from Aston Martin. They didn't send him out with enough time. They sent him right at the back of the queue as well. He was ahead of Stroll at one point as well. So again, I'm not too sure whether anything went wrong for him, but it was a decent performance. But I wonder whether being in a car that isn't performing at the top level is starting to have an impact on him. Because we saw last season, he's still got it. He's still able to put in these brilliant drives, but when the car's not there, is the motivation the same? Probably not. But moving on now to ninth place man, Alex Albon. So he's qualified ninth, he's started ninth, he's finished ninth, and that's a 9 out of 10 from me. Brilliant points for Albon. The Williams did look fairly quick this weekend, which from where it's been, from where they expected it to be, and where it's been throughout the season, is a big improvement. And again, hopefully we can see Albon challenge for points on a more consistent basis.
Yeah. Also, from myself, I've gone with a 9 out of 10. I don't think I can really add much on from what you said. Or Alex Albon scoops gladly over nines, 9 in qualifying, 9 in the race, 9 out of 10 from me. All that I need to say. Very good performance, very assured, good points for Williams.
Yuki Tsunoda up next, and he finished 10th. So I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Tsunoda. He started down in 13th, so he was starting a little bit further back. But I think they had a very solid race with their strategy at RB. And yeah, you can't criticize them too much. It's a good point for Tsunoda. He's put in a good performance. So it's an 8 out of 10.
I've also set with an 8 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. He's gained 3 places, I believe, the most behind Kevin Magnussen in places gained. But I think RB are looking at gaining those points when they're on offer, especially like with your Sergio Perez, with your George Russells, with your Charles Leclerc's, when they're not in the race and when they're not on it, I believe they should be there and pouncing. Ricardo obviously finished down in 13th, but Tsunoda was there to pounce and get a point. So it's a good point for RB. But I think they'll kind of be wanting a lot more in the upcoming weekends ahead of a summer break. So yeah, I've gone with an 8 out of 10. Good performance, good positions gained, and good race finish for Yuki Tsunoda.
Next up is Logan Sargent, who finished up in 11th. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for him because it was a very good, very solid performance for Sargent. Whether it'll be enough to save his seat, who knows? But again, it was he made a lovely overtake on Magnussen into Stowe, which we saw. And I know there was a bit of a gap between him and Albon, but it's progress, isn't it? He's finished 20 seconds behind. So he's losing about half a second a lap. But a good effort from him. Only 9 seconds off the points as well. So it's a much improved performance from Logan Sargent.
Yeah, I've also gone with an 8 out of 10. It's almost points, but it's not. He's gained a place from his qualifying position, obviously because of George Russell once again. But it's very, very much improved. Like you said, we saw that overtake on Magnussen into Stowe, and we had a person in front of us who was a Williams fan who, incidentally, his best friend looked like Max Verstappen. Photo coming quite soon, on our TikTok channels. But yeah, honestly, the guy that was with the Williams fan, was a doppelganger of Max Verstappen. But from Max Verstappen, more talking about Logan Sargent. Whether it will save his seat, nobody knows. But those are sort of the performances that he kind of needs to churn out between now and the end of the season, kind of get the bit between his teeth and get onto the fringe of the points and maybe even secure 1 or 2 points finishes in the near future. But yeah, very muchly improved. 8 out of 10.
Next up, Kevin Magnussen finished 12th. I've gone for a 6 out of 10. Now, on the face of it, 12th is a good result. However, he has finished about a minute behind Hulkenberg. And when you've got Hulkenberg finishing up in 6th and Magnussen, outside the points and sort of about over 10 seconds off the points as well. He wasn't right on the back of Tsunoda or anything like that. He was lagging behind. It's not the performance he would have wanted, given how well Nico Hulkenberg has done. It's almost as if he's been punished because of how well his teammates done. But he's in the same car, and that's the best judge of his performance. So 6 out of 10.
I've gone with a 7. I think you've kind of criticised Kevin Magnussen a little bit unfairly there. The man started P17th. He's gained 5 places to finish P12. Yeah, Logan Sargent finished ahead of him. Yeah, he's likely to be memed because of that. But I still think he's had a very, very good performance. He's obviously not to the standard of Nico Hulkenberg, who finished well inside the points, but it's still a decent performance no matter what. Haas are of that team that I think especially after Austria, Kevin Magnussen would have wanted a little bit more. But to finish P12 and like not too far away from the points, I don't think you can be too disheartened with that, especially when you start at 17th. So I've gone with a 7. It's nowhere near to Nico Hulkenberg's standard, but it's a decent race.
Up next, Daniel Ricciardo finish it down in 13th. I've gone for a 6 out of 10. Again, he's made his way up through the field. I think he started a few places lower down. How much of that is the cars in front of him messing up their strategy or retiring or whatnot is a question. But he's finished quite a way off his teammates, so I've got to take that into account. It's a 6 out of 10. I might even be being a bit too nice there.
No, I don't think you're being too nice because I've also gone with a 6. I think, especially finishing that far behind your teammate, it's not what you want for Daniel Ricciardo, especially when you're being linked with the Red Bull seat if Sergio Perez's performances aren't going to go on an upward trend. Yeah, it was sort of average for me for Daniel Ricciardo. It wasn't anything amazing, but it wasn't anything bad. So yeah, I've settled with a 6 out of 10.
Charles Leclerc up next. Now he had a bit of a stinker of a race, didn't he? He actually made some good progress at the start. He got himself up to 7th, behind Sainz, but he was losing so much time per lap that Ferrari almost were forced to pitting him when the rain started to come down. I think he cooked his tyres a bit too much to get him through the likes of Stroll, Hulkenberg, and whatnot. But it was and then he put on the Insters too early, and then what can you do? He's hoping for a safety car at this point, realistically, isn't he? And I tell you what, his form since that win in Monaco is absolutely atrocious. He's only got points in 1 race out of the 4, and that was a 5th place in Spain. It's not the best performance from him. 4 out of 10.
Yeah, short and sweet from me. 4 out of 10 as well. Absolute disaster class. I mean, Ferrari's strategy just didn't really help him, pitting him onto the Inter tyre too quickly. And from then on in, he was a tractor alongside Sergio Perez using his little clown horn to try and make his way past. You might hear that clown horn a little bit later on when we talk about Sergio Perez. But yeah, for me, Charles Leclerc, 4 out of 10.
Next up then is 15th place man, Valtteri Bottas. It's just a bit nothing really, isn't it? I've gone for a 5 out of 10, but this could be anything. I don't know where that car is at all. But yeah, it's not a good performance at all. But again, as I said earlier, a wheelie bin.
I can't stop laughing when you say a wheelie bin. But I couldn't agree more. I've also gone with a 5 out of 10. It's very much average. He's starting 16th and he's finished 15th. He's finished behind Charles Leclerc, who had an absolute stinker. And he's kind of lucky that he's finished behind Sergio Perez as well. It was at one point very much charging and very much on it. But yeah, 5 out of 10, very much middle of the road from me.
Esteban Ocon is up next, and he finished down his 16th. Now, I don't know where this car was. He qualified down in 18th after the Alpine has looked quite good in recent races. I don't know what happened to him, but not a good outing for him. So I've gone for a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, another one who joins my 5 out of 10 club is Esteban Ocon. Yeah, Alpine have sort of had problems. We saw the problems with Pierre Gasly where he actually did not start the race. And I think that kind of transpired into the other Alpine where Esteban Ocon wasn't able to make any progress at all in his car. He's gained 2 places, frankly, from his starting position. But yeah, very much bang slap average, so 5 out of 10.
And now it's Sergio Perez down in 17th. It's a massive 2 out of 10 for Sergio. So I've actually just seen that the performance clauses that I spoke about earlier in Sergio Perez's contract are that he cannot be more than 100 points behind Max Verstappen after the Belgian Grand Prix. Now, there are 2 races before the Belgian Grand Prix is completed. So we've got Hungary next weekend and then we've got Belgium. He is currently 137 points behind Max Verstappen. So he has to gain 37 points in the next 2 races. And he can't be more than 5 places behind Verstappen in the World Drivers' Championship. Now, currently he's 5 places behind. However, George Russell is 7 points behind. And Lewis Hamilton is 8 points behind. So there is a very strong possibility going in after the Belgian Grand Prix, he could be coming up to about 160, 170 points behind Verstappen and be 8th in the championship, while his teammate has an 80-point lead at the top of the table. Sergio Perez, they need to make a call. It's obviously too much for him. He deserves a seat in F1, don't get me wrong, but he should not be in the quickest team. He should not be in the quickest car. The car that's been the quickest over the last 3 years. So a 2 out of 10 for Sergio Perez.
Yeah, I've gone for a massive 1 out of 10 for Sergio Perez. Purely on the basis, man's got experience, man's got the car underneath him, and yet he still can't deliver. What on earth is he doing at Red Bull? I don't know. You've got promising Red Bull juniors like Liam Lawson, like Isaac Hadjar. You've got Yuki Tsunoda waiting in the wings. You've got Daniel Ricciardo, who's performed better than Sergio Perez in a worse car this weekend just gone past. And the man's still somehow got a seat. Yeah, he's arguably going to be axed mid-season during the summer break because there's no chance he's gaining 37 points on Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen is clearly got to retire both the Hungarian and the Belgian Grand Prix for Sergio Perez to do anything. But then again, Sergio Perez has got to win at least one of them. So potato, tomato, tomato, add 2 in 1. Sergio Perez soon to be goodbye from Red Bull potentially. But yeah, it's the easiest 1 out of 10 I've given out this season, and I feel like a weight is lifted off my shoulders. But I finally done it to Sergio Perez because it's a long time coming, and we finally found a performance where he's been absolutely dog. And here comes my sound effect for the Sergio Perez horn.
Yeah. So moving on now to the last of the finishers is Zhou Guanyu, and I've gone for a 5 out of 10. I really have nothing to add. I think he had a 4-stop race or something ridiculous like that. So yeah, not a good race for Zhou Guanyu, but again, wheelie bin.
Bloody hell, you like talking about wheelie bins, don't you? Have you got a wheelie bin fetish or something? Do you go like sniffing wheelie bins in your free time or something? I've gone with a 4 out of 10. He outqualified his teammate. He's gone backwards. He's had about a 17-stop race. Yeah, just wheelie bin.
George Russell up next. Now this is what could have been, really, isn't it? He was in the running. He was in the hunt for not only a podium but for the win. For a large amount of the race, he led the first however many laps before the rain came. I still think he would have been challenging come the end of the race if it wasn't for that it was like a water leak or something, wasn't it? The water got into the electrical systems or something like that. I think he would have been up there challenging for the win, possibly. Definitely would have got a podium, I think. and maybe even better. Who knows? But I've given him an 8 out of 10 because, again, it's something completely out of his control. But I can't give him any higher than that realistically when he's not finished the race.
Yeah, I've also given him an 8 out of 10. His qualifying performance was absolutely unreal. And yeah, it's another race of ifs and buts. But yeah, that water leak did kind of hamper him. And I'll just round out the last driver on the grid with Pierre Gasly. Yeah, qualified P20, did not even start. Yeah, it's a 3 out of 10. The progress that Alpine made to go this far backwards, it's very shocking. But I'm sure they'll bounce back and kind of rectify those mistakes. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 for George Russell and a 3 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly.
And then finally, it is Pierre Gasly. So you've given him a 3 out of 10. I've gone for a 4 out of 10 because he didn't complete the formation lap. He was starting from the pit lane, didn't complete the formation lap, and he only done one lap in qualifying, and that was not a representative lap because it was on the inters, and it was just to make sure he was doing it for the sake of it because he had that massive penalty. So I don't know how to judge him on that. So I just gave him the same grade as his teammate. But moving on now to the F2 action this weekend. So we watched the F2 and we saw Isaac Hadjar take pole position on the Friday session. And then on the Saturday in the sprint race, we saw Kimi Antonelli, a brilliant drive in what was a very disrupted race. There was a safety car almost every lap, wasn't there? But he held his nerve. He put in a great performance and got the win there. And then in the feature race, Isaac Hadjar got the win. Starting from pole position, he made it count and was in control for a lot of that race. Zane Maloney came second and Zach Crawford finished third. What are your thoughts on the F2 action? So very entertaining races there. We watched them both, and they didn't disappoint, did they?
No, they certainly did not disappoint. Like you said, Isaac Hadjar, a massive gainer from this weekend at Silverstone. Obviously made that pole position count. Turned it into a F2 feature race win. Kimi Antonelli getting his first win of the season. To gain himself a couple of points in the championship and a place in the order. But yeah, there was the one thing that stood out to me was we talked about Paul Aaron's consistency, and he was nowhere to be seen. Qualifying was dismal. Sprint race was. I believe he crashed out into. I think it was him and Isaac Hadjar that collided in the sprint race, which brought out another safety car. And then in the feature race, once again, he was nowhere to be seen. But his consistency kind of lacked at Silverstone. And Isaac Hadjar and Zane Maloney were the two big gainers. Maloney with 2 podiums, and Isaac Hadjar with a feature race victory. Alongside, obviously, he had good performances in Bortoleto and Colapinto, who obviously had that FP1 outing. Jack Crawford gained a podium. And Kimi Antonelli and Koshmani Antonelli won in the sprint race, and Koshmani got a podium in the sprint race. So there was a lot of good performance, but from that weekend, you probably arguably got to say that Isaac Hadjar was the biggest gainer and kind of showed that whenever you put it on pole position at Silverstone, you've got to make it count and gain the most points on the Sunday, and he certainly did that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it does mean that Isaac Hadjar takes the lead of the Formula 2 Championship. Paul Aaron drops down to second. Again, as he said, he's not got a single point in that over the weekend. And it's quite a shock considering the lowest before Silverstone was 10 points all the way back in Jeddah. So a disappointing weekend for him. Zane Maloney takes third in the championship, overtaking Bortoleto, and then Colapinto down in 5th place. We'll move on now to the Formula 3 action. Now I tell you what, the feature race was absolutely insane. We were sat Stowe, so we saw the massive crash there on lap. I think it was lap 3. It was, wasn't it? but it was Arvid Lindblad at his home Grand Prix, not only getting the feature race, but getting the sprint race as well. He held off Mini in the Prema to claim the victory. What did you make of the F3 action? It was a nice little appetizer, wasn't it, for the Formula One on the Sunday morning?
Well, you say the Formula One, it was an appetizer for the Formula Two and then for the Formula One. But Arvid Lindblad, we didn't watch the F3 sprint because we were too busy watching the football in England playing against Switzerland. So we let others watch on with that as the sprint was postponed from the morning to the evening. But in the feature race, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Callum Voisin that crossed the line first, but he got a penalty. And Arvid Lindblad took the victory with Gabriel Amini gaining P2. But to gain a double race victory in your home Grand Prix, I believe it's, I don't know how many race victories. I think it's 3 or 4 for Arvid Lindblad. I think he's won twice already in Formula 3, sorry. And to get the double at Silverstone is mega sweet, and to do it as a rookie as well, and to propel yourself into stardom and into the top 3 of the championship, it's very much impressive. The most points out of the top 5, Arvid Lindblad gained. He gained 36 points from that weekend alone. The second best was Gabriel Amini, who is now the championship leader, who gained 24 points. But the 2 Prema drivers had a fantastic weekend, and it shows that in Formula 2, Prema might not be doing so well, but in Formula 3, they're still definitely dominating it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for the standings, it means that Gabriel Mini has his lead closed up, so he's got just a 6-point lead over Arvid Lindblad now. Luke Browning drops to 3rd, and Fornaroli in 4th, and Oliver Goethe in 5th. So thank you all for listening to this episode of On the Grid podcast. We will see you in the next episode next week, where we will be reviewing our predictions for Silverstone and looking ahead to Hungary at the weekend. Thank you all for listening, and goodbye.